My name is Margaret Thompson, 68 years old, living quietly outside Chicago. For years, I hid the bruises, excused the yelling, told myself my own son couldn't be the monster he became. Then one ordinary Tuesday night, over a simple bowl of unsalted soup, everything exploded. He beat me. Fists. Blood on the kitchen floor. His cold voice saying, "You made me do this." What I did next wasn't revenge. It was something far more dangerous. I chose myself. Hidden documents, a secret trust, one 3 a.m. email that changed everything. This is my shocking true story of abuse, silent strength, and the justice no one saw coming. Watch till the end. You won't believe what happened next.
My name is Margaret Thompson. I turned 68 last November, though most days I feel older than the cracked sidewalks outside my house in Oak Park, just west of Chicago. The house itself is a red brick two-story built in 1952, same one my husband Daniel and I bought when Ethan was still in diapers, same kitchen where I taught him how to crack eggs without getting shell in the batter. Same table where we used to eat Sunday pancakes, laughing until syrup ran down our chins. That kitchen used to smell like cinnamon and safety. Now it mostly smells like fear. It was a Tuesday in late October, the kind of gray Chicago day where the sky looks like wet concrete and the wind cuts through your coat like it's personal. I'd been home all day, retired from the law firm 3 years earlier, but old habits die hard. I still woke at 6:30, made coffee, checked the mail, watered the African violets on the windowsill, even though they'd stopped blooming years ago. Ethan had moved back in after Daniel's funeral. Just until I get back on my feet, he'd said. That was 10 years ago. His feet never quite made it. I spent the afternoon making soup. Nothing fancy. Carrots, celery, onions, potatoes, a little thyme from the sad little herb pot on my counter. I simmered it low and slow, the way Daniel liked it. Ethan liked it too, once. When he was small, he'd sit on the step stool and stir with a wooden spoon bigger than his arm, telling me it was magic potion. I smiled at the memory while I stirred. Stupid, maybe, to cling to those moments, but memories are all you have when the present hurts too much. By 6:45, the house smelled warm, comforting. I set the table the way I always did, cloth napkin folded just so, spoon on the right because that's how Daniel taught me, water glass filled exactly 3/4. Ethan walked in at 7:02. I heard the front door slam harder than necessary, keys thrown onto the hall table with that metallic clatter that always made my shoulders rise. He didn't say hello. He never did anymore. "Dinner's ready," I called softly from the kitchen doorway. He grunted, shrugged off his coat, hung it crooked on the hook. His tie was already loosened, shirt untucked. He looked older than 39, bags under his eyes, jaw tight the way it got when the bourbon was talking louder than his conscience. I ladled the soup into his favorite bowl, the blue ceramic one with the tiny chip on the rim from when he was 12, and dropped it playing catch with a baseball indoors. I set it in front of him, steam curling up like little ghosts. He picked up the spoon without looking at me. 1 bite. 2. Then the spoon hit the table with a crack that echoed like a gunshot. "No salt?" His voice was low, controlled, the dangerous kind of quiet. "You forgot the damn salt again." My stomach dropped the way it always did when his tone shifted. I wiped my hands on the dish towel, forcing a small smile. "I'm sorry, honey. I must have missed it. Let me fix it right now." I turned toward the salt cellar on the counter. That was my mistake. Turning my back. His hand clamped around my wrist before I took 2 steps. Hard. Fingers like steel. I gasped, more from surprise than pain, though the pain came quick enough. "You always do this," his voice rising now. "You always screw it up. Can't even make a simple bowl of soup without screwing it up." "Ethan, please." I tried to twist free. Big mistake. He yanked me toward him. The first hit was open-handed, a sharp crack across my left cheek. My head snapped sideways. I tasted blood instantly. The second was a closed fist, right under my eye.
Stars exploded behind my eyelids. I stumbled back, hips slamming into the edge of the counter. The salt shaker tipped over, white grains scattering across the floor like snow. He didn't stop. The third hit caught my jaw. I heard something pop. Maybe a tooth loosening, maybe just cartilage. The fourth was to my ribs. I doubled over, arms instinctively wrapping around my middle. The fifth landed on the back of my head as I tried to turn away. My knees buckled. I went down hard, right knee cracking against the linoleum. The bowl of soup tipped, hot liquid splashing across my forearm. I didn't even feel the burn right then. I curled into myself on the floor, fetal position, the same way I'd done since the first time he shoved me 4 years earlier. Protect the face, protect the ribs, wait for it to end. He stood over me, breathing hard. I could see his black dress shoes, still shiny from the morning polish. One of them nudged my hip like he was testing if I was still alive. "Clean this up," he said. Flat, cold. "And don't you dare tell anyone. You made me do this." Then he walked away. Down the hall, into the guest room that used to be his childhood bedroom. Door shut. TV clicked on. I heard canned laughter from some sitcom he liked. Big, fake, booming. He laughed along with it. I stayed on the floor. The soup cooled around me, congealing into a thick orange puddle. Blood dripped from my lip onto the tiles. Plink, plink, mixing with the broth. My right eye was already swelling shut. I could feel the skin tightening like overstretched dough. My forearm throbbed where the soup had burned me. I didn't move to wipe any of it. Minutes passed, maybe 20, maybe 40. Time gets slippery when you're bleeding on your own kitchen floor.
TV laughter drifting down the hall. Ethan snoring now. He always fell asleep fast after these episodes, like violence was a sleeping pill. I stared at my phone lying on the table. Black screen, no notifications, no one to call. My sister in Florida hadn't spoken to me in 6 years after I made excuses for a black eye one Christmas. My best friend Linda from the firm had moved to Arizona. Our last conversation ended when I laughed off a question about why I never visited anymore. I could call 911. Right then, say the words, "My son hit me." But what would happen next? He'd cry. He'd tell them I fell. He'd say I was confused, old, forgetful. The police would look at me, 68, bruised, shaking, and then look at him, clean-cut, employed, charming when he wanted to be. They'd ask if I wanted to press charges. I'd hesitate, and in that hesitation, he'd win again. So I didn't call. Instead, I sat there in the dark kitchen that used to feel like home, holding melting ice against my swollen face, listening to my son snore like a man without guilt. And something inside me, small, quiet, but alive, finally whispered, "Enough."
Looking back, the soup incident wasn't the beginning. It was just the night the mask finally cracked so wide even I couldn't ignore the pieces on the floor. The real story, the slow, grinding one, started years earlier, in small increments so quiet I almost convinced myself they weren't happening. Daniel died on a Tuesday in March 2015. Massive heart attack while he was mowing the lawn. He was 62. One minute he was waving at the neighbor's kid on a bike, the next he was gone. I found him face down in the grass, mower still running in circles until it ran out of gas. The funeral was small. Ethan flew in from Seattle, hugged me stiffly at the graveside, told me he'd handle everything. I believed him because I was too numb to argue. He never left. At first, it felt like mercy. He took over the bills, fixed the leaky faucet in the upstairs bathroom, drove me to the grocery store when my knee acted up. I told myself I was lucky to have a son who cared, but gratitude has a short shelf life when someone starts rewriting the rules. The first real sign came 6 months after the funeral. I noticed the checking account balance dropping faster than it should. I asked Ethan about it casually over breakfast, pancakes, the way we used to make them. He smiled that tight smile he'd perfected and said, "Just some unexpected expenses, Ma. Roof needs work. I'll sort it." I nodded, trusted him. Daniel always said Ethan had a good head for numbers. 3 months later, the credit card statement arrived. Charges in Vegas, online poker sites, a sports bar I'd never heard of. Total, $4,800 in one billing cycle. When I showed him the paper, hands shaking, he laughed, short, sharp, like I'd told a bad joke. "You're overreacting. It's temporary. I'll pay it back." He didn't. Instead, he took the card for safekeeping, said I was too emotional after Dad's death to manage money responsibly. I let him. I was still grieving, still waking up expecting to hear Daniel's footsteps on the stairs. Confrontation felt like too much weight. That was mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 came the first time he shoved me. It was Christmas Eve 2017. I'd invited my sister Carol and her husband up from St. Louis. I wanted normalcy. Lights on the tree, presents wrapped, eggnog in the punch bowl. Ethan had been drinking since noon. By dinner, he was slurring. I asked gently if he could slow down. He stood up so fast the chair tipped over. "Don't tell me what to do in my own house." "Your house?" I said it softly, surprised. He stepped close. Too close. I smelled bourbon and sweat. Then his palms hit my shoulders. Hard. I staggered backward, caught myself on the edge of the dining table. The crystal bowl of cranberry sauce shattered on the floor. Carol gasped. Her husband stood up. Ethan looked at them, then at me. "She's fine. She tripped." I nodded quickly. "I'm fine, just clumsy." Carol's eyes filled with tears. She didn't believe me. Neither did I, really. But I smiled through it, served dessert, pretended the red mark on my shoulder was from bumping the doorframe earlier. They left the next morning. Carol called twice a week for a month, asking if I was okay. I said yes every time. Eventually the calls slowed, then stopped. I told myself it was better that way. No one asking questions I couldn't answer. After that, the shoves became more frequent. A push when I asked why the electric bill was overdue. A hard grip on my arm when I suggested he see someone about the drinking. Yelling that turned into things thrown. Never at me directly, just near enough to make me flinch. A coffee mug that shattered against the wall 2 inches from my head. A remote control that left a bruise on my thigh when it hit. I learned the patterns. If I stayed quiet, kept dinner hot, didn't mention money or his late nights, things stayed calm. If I spoke up about anything, he escalated, so I stopped speaking up. I hid the bruises the way women have hidden them for generations. Long sleeves even in summer, scarves when the marks were on my neck, makeup heavier than I'd ever worn, even for my wedding. At the small law firm where I worked as a legal secretary until 2022, people noticed. My friend Janice asked once, point blank, if everything was okay at home. I laughed it off. Just getting old, bumping into things. She didn't push. I was grateful. And ashamed. Ethan controlled the money tighter each year. He changed the passwords on the bank accounts to make it easier. He took my debit card and gave me cash, $50 a week, like I was a child. If I needed more, for gas, for prescriptions, he'd sigh like I was asking for the moon. "You don't need that much, Ma. You hardly leave the house." He was right. I hardly did. Friends stopped inviting me places. I stopped accepting. How do you explain why you can't stay out past 7? Why you flinch when someone raises their voice? Why your hands shake when you pour coffee? I told myself it was temporary, that he'd get help, that one day he'd wake up and see what he was doing. I prayed for that day every night, kneeling beside my bed like I did when I was a girl. God didn't answer in the way I hoped. Instead, he gave me the soup night. That was the night I realized the bruises weren't just on my skin anymore. They were in my bones, in my sleep, in the way I walked softer around my own house, in the way I apologized before I even knew what I was apologizing for. I was 66 years old, widowed, isolated, financially dependent on a man who hated me for needing him, and still, I stayed. Because leaving felt like betraying the little boy who used to hug me so tight his arms trembled. Because I kept hoping that boy was still in there somewhere, buried under the anger and the booze and the gambling losses. Because I was terrified that if I left, I'd have nothing left at all. So I stayed silent. I stayed bruised. I stayed invisible. Until the unsalted soup landed on the floor and my blood mixed with it, and something inside me, something small and stubborn and long forgotten, finally said, "No more." The kitchen light was off. Only the blue glow from the microwave clock, 2:47 a.m., cut through the darkness. I sat at the table in the same chair where Ethan had eaten his soup 4 hours earlier, the same chair where I'd once fed him mashed peas when he was teething. Now the chair felt too big, or maybe I felt too small. My right eye was swollen almost shut. Every time I blinked, the lid scraped like sandpaper. The ice pack I'd wrapped in a dish towel had melted into a lukewarm puddle on the table. I hadn't bothered to refill it. Ethan's snores drifted down the hallway, deep, rhythmic, satisfied. The sound used to comfort me when he was a teenager staying out late. Now it felt like a taunt. He slept like a man who'd done nothing wrong. I envied that kind of peace. My phone lay face down on the table like it might bite me. I'd stared at it for nearly an hour, thumb hovering over the screen, debating. 911 was one tap away. I could whisper the words into the receiver. My son hit me. He won't stop. They'd send someone. Lights flashing in the quiet suburb. Neighbors peeking through curtains. Questions. Reports. Maybe handcuffs. But then what? I pictured it too clearly. Ethan in the living room, hair mussed from sleep, using that calm, reasonable voice he saved for authority figures. Officer, she's confused. She fell. She's been forgetful lately. Memory issues. You know how it is with older folks. I was trying to help her up when she got upset. He'd show concern. Perfect posture. Clean shirt. No visible marks on his knuckles because he'd washed them already. They'd look at me, 68, bruised, shaking, no witnesses, and they'd see what he wanted them to see, a fragile widow making accusations in the middle of the night. I'd seen it happen to Mrs. Kowalski down the block 2 years ago. Her grandson lived with her, took her Social Security checks, roughed her up when she asked for grocery money. Police came twice. Both times he talked his way out. Third time she ended up in the hospital with a broken hip. He got probation. She got moved to a nursing home. I visited her once. She wouldn't look me in the eye. I understood why. Calling the police felt like rolling dice with my life, and I'd never been much of a gambler. So I didn't dial. Instead, I turned the phone over, opened the email app, and stared at the blank compose screen. My thumbs hovered. Who could I tell? Who would actually listen without turning it into gossip or pity? My mind went to Robert Sullivan.
Mr. Sullivan, never Bob, always Robert, had been the senior partner at Sullivan & Associates since before I started there in 1985. He was 75 now, semi-retired, but still came into the office twice a week to keep an eye on things. He'd hired me when I was 28, pregnant with Ethan, fresh off a divorce from a man who thought marriage meant ownership. Robert never asked questions about my bruises back then. He just gave me the corner desk by the window and told me to take all the time I needed when Ethan was born. Over the decades, he'd become more than a boss. He was the one who helped me navigate Daniel's estate when the heart attack hit. He was the one who quietly paid my health insurance premium one year when I was short after a bad flu season. He never made a fuss about it, just a memo saying, approved adjustment. When I retired, he gave me a small gold pin shaped like a gavel and said, "You were the backbone of this place, Margaret. Don't forget it." I hadn't spoken to him in almost 2 years, not since the retirement lunch where everyone clapped and I smiled so hard my cheeks hurt. But I still had his personal email, the one he only gave to a handful of people. My fingers started moving before my brain caught up. Subject, urgent, personal matter. Please read immediately. Dear Robert. I don't know where to begin, so I'll just start. Ethan has been hurting me. Not just tonight, though tonight was bad enough that I can barely type this without wincing, but for years. The first time he shoved me was Christmas 2017. Since then, it's been slaps, punches, shoves. Tonight, he beat me because the soup didn't have enough salt. My lip is split. My eye is swollen shut. My ribs hurt when I breathe. I'm sitting in the dark kitchen right now while he sleeps like nothing happened. I've hidden it. I've made excuses. I've told myself it's my fault, that I provoke him, that he's grieving too. But I can't lie to myself anymore. I'm scared, not just of him,
of what happens if I stay silent. I'm scared of losing the house, the little savings I have left, my dignity. He controls the money now. He forged checks. He's taken over $80,000 in the last 5 years. I have proof, screenshots, statements, photos of the bruises with dates written on the back. I kept everything in a hidden folder on my laptop because I didn't know who else to trust. That's why I'm writing to you. You remember the trust Daniel set up in 2005? I'm still the trustee. Ethan thinks it all passes to him automatically. He doesn't know I amended it quietly in 2019, after the first real beating. I named you successor trustee. There's a clause. If any family member is proven to have committed elder abuse or financial exploitation against me, their share is revoked and redirected to the Chicago Metropolitan Family Violence Shelter.
I'm attaching everything: the trust documents, the bank records, the photos, the police report I haven't filed yet, but I will tomorrow if I can find the strength. I don't know what I'm asking: advice, help, someone to believe me, maybe just someone to know before I disappear into another excuse. I'm sorry to burden you with this, but you're the only person I trust not to turn away. Thank you, Robert, for everything, always. Margaret. I attached the files, 6 in total, scanned trust pages, Excel sheet of unauthorized transactions, 12 time-stamped photos of bruises over the years, some faded yellow, some fresh purple. My stomach twisted as I hit attach. It felt like undressing in front of a stranger. I reread the email twice. My hands shook so badly the cursor jumped. Then I pressed send. 3:17 a.m. The whoosh sound felt final. I closed the laptop, sat in the dark, listened to Ethan's snores. For the first time in years, the fear in my chest had company. Something sharper, colder, quieter. Determination. I didn't know if Robert would reply. I didn't know if he'd believe me. But I'd done something. One small, irreversible step. Tomorrow, I would call in sick to the volunteer shift I still did at the library. Tomorrow, I would pack a bag. Small, nothing obvious. Tomorrow, I would go to the women's shelter on the other side of the county, the one with the unlisted address. Tomorrow, I would file the police report. Tomorrow, I would stop being invisible. But tonight I just sat there, in the dark kitchen that used to feel like home, holding my bruised face, feeling the first faint flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Small, fragile, but alive. The morning after I sent the email to Robert, the house felt different, not safer, just quieter, like the air itself was holding its breath. Ethan left for work at 7:15 like always. Quick shower, black coffee gulped standing at the counter, tie knotted in the hallway mirror while he scrolled his phone. He didn't look at my face, didn't ask why my eye was still purple or why I moved like I was 90. He just said, "See you tonight," and the front door clicked shut behind him. I waited 10 full minutes after his car pulled out of the driveway. Then I went to the small office Daniel had used as a study, the one Ethan now called his space. The door was locked, but I knew where the spare key was taped under the bottom drawer of the hall credenza. My hand shook as I turned it. Inside smelled like his cologne, mixed with stale beer, and the faint chemical tang of whatever vape juice he used now. The laptop was on the desk, lid half closed. I didn't touch it. Instead, I knelt by the bottom file drawer, the one he never bothered locking because he thought I never came in here anymore. I pulled it open slowly. There, behind a stack of old tax folders, was the plain manila envelope I'd hidden in 2019. Thick, sealed with packing tape, marked in my own handwriting. Personal, do not open. I carried it to the kitchen table, the same table where the soup had spilled the night before. Sat down, took a deep breath that hurt my ribs. Then I opened it. Inside were the originals and copies of everything I'd attached to Robert's email. The 2005 revocable living trust Daniel had drawn up with our old estate lawyer. 8 pages of dense legalese that basically said, upon my death, everything, house, savings accounts, brokerage portfolio, life insurance proceeds, went into the trust for the benefit and security of Margaret Thompson during her lifetime, with remainder to Ethan James Thompson upon her death. Simple, standard,
what most couples did back then. What Ethan never knew, what I never told him, was the amendment I filed quietly in March 2019, 3 months after the Christmas shove that left a handprint on my shoulder for 2 weeks. I'd driven to the lawyer's office alone on a sleek gray afternoon, told the receptionist it was just routine paperwork, sat in the conference room while the attorney explained the changes in careful, neutral language. I listened, nodded, signed where the blue chaps pointed. No tears, no drama, just a woman protecting herself the only way she knew how. The key changes were 2. First, I named Robert Sullivan as successor trustee if I became incapacitated or upon my death. Ethan was still primary beneficiary, but Robert would step in if needed. Second, and this was the part that could ruin him, I added a forfeiture clause. Paragraph 7.4b. Any beneficiary who is adjudicated or pleads guilty to elder abuse, financial exploitation, physical assault, or any form of domestic violence against the settler, Margaret Thompson, shall forfeit all interest in the trust estate. Said forfeited interest shall be distributed in full to the Chicago Metropolitan Family Violence Shelter or its successor organization. I remember the lawyer pausing when he read that part back to me. "Margaret, are you sure?" he asked quietly. I looked him in the eye and said, "I've never been more sure of anything." He didn't ask why. He just notarized it. Now, sitting at the kitchen table with the paper spread out, I felt the weight of that decision all over again. Back then, it had been insurance, a safety net I hoped I'd never need. Now it was a loaded gun pointed at my own son. Underneath the trust documents was my secret ledger, 3 spiral notebooks and a flash drive. I'd started keeping records the week after the Christmas incident. Every unauthorized withdrawal, every forged check I found when I secretly requested duplicate statements from the bank, every time he used my debit card for online gambling sites, I'd screenshot the confirmations when he left his phone unlocked. Over $82,000 in 5 years. Enough to buy a decent condo outright. Enough to keep me comfortable in my old age. Enough to make a prosecutor salivate. I flipped through the photos last. 12 Polaroids and printed phone pictures, each with the date written on the back in black Sharpie. Bruised wrist, March 2018. Black eye under concealer, July 2019. Split lip, November 2021. Rib contusions, February 2023. And the newest ones, last night's damage, taken in the bathroom mirror at 4 a.m. after I sent the email. My face looked like roadkill. I stared at the photo until my good eye blurred with tears I refused to let fall. I resealed the envelope, slipped it into my purse, the big leather tote I used for grocery runs. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I called the women's shelter hotline I'd saved in my contacts under Linda, library. A calm voice answered on the second ring. "Safe Harbor Women's Center. This is Maria. How can I help you today?" I swallowed. My voice came out small. "I need to come in today. I can't stay here anymore." She didn't ask for details over the phone, just asked if I was in immediate danger, if I needed police escort, if I had a bag ready. I said no to the escort, yes to the bag. She gave me the address of the safe drop-off point, a church parking lot 20 minutes away, and told me to come between 10 a.m. and noon. I hung up, looked around the kitchen one last time, the African violets on the windowsill, the chipped blue bowl on the drying rack, the spot on the floor where my blood had been. Then I moved fast, packed a duffel from the hall closet, 2 changes of clothes, my medications, the envelope of documents, the flash drive, my passport just in case, a photo of Daniel and baby Ethan I kept in my nightstand drawer. Nothing flashy, nothing he'd notice missing right away. I left the house at 9:40 a.m., locked the door behind me like I was going to the store for milk, drove the old Honda Civic Daniel had bought new in 2008, the one Ethan never let me replace because it still runs fine. My hands shook on the wheel the whole way. At the church lot, a volunteer in a plain gray hoodie met me. She didn't hug me, just opened the back door of an unmarked minivan and said, "You're safe now." I climbed in. The door slid shut. The van pulled away.
In the rearview mirror, I watched Oak Park disappear block by block. I didn't cry until we crossed the county line. Then the tears came. Quiet, steady, the kind that wash something away instead of drowning you. For the first time in a decade, I wasn't running from my son. I was running toward whatever came next, and whatever it was, I wasn't facing it alone anymore. The van from Safe Harbor dropped me at their main shelter just after 11 a.m., a plain two-story building tucked behind a strip mall in Elmhurst. No sign out front, just a discreet number on the door. Maria, the intake coordinator who'd ridden with me, walked me inside without a word until we were past the security buzzer. Then she turned, gave me a small, steady smile, and said, "You did the hardest part already. You're here."
They photographed my injuries in a quiet exam room, close-ups of the split lip, the purple bloom around my right eye, the finger-shaped bruises on my left wrist, the mottled burn on my forearm from the hot soup. The nurse, young, gentle, wearing pale blue scrubs, kept apologizing as the flash went off. I told her it was okay. I'd taken worse pictures myself in bathroom mirrors at 4 a.m. She gave me an ice pack, ibuprofen, and a referral for an ER visit if the ribs got worse. I nodded, but I wasn't ready to leave yet. Leaving felt like stepping back into the world where Ethan could find me. They assigned me a small room on the second floor, single bed, shared bathroom down the hall, window overlooking a fenced backyard with a swing set no one used. I unpacked the duffel, folded clothes into the narrow dresser, placed Daniel's photo on the nightstand, tucked the manila envelope of documents under the mattress like it was contraband. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. For the first time in years, no one was watching me. No one was waiting for me to make a mistake. The silence was deafening. I called the library where I volunteered twice a week, story time for preschoolers, and told them I had a family emergency. The director, sweet Mrs. Patel, said, "Take all the time you need, Margaret. We'll manage." I thanked her and hung up before my voice cracked. Next, I called the Oak Park Police non-emergency line from the shelter's landline. A dispatcher named Officer Ramirez took my report over the phone. I told her everything: the soup, the beating, the years of smaller incidents. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "Ma'am, we'd like you to come in and make a formal statement. We can send a car to your location if you're not safe to travel." I gave her the shelter's address. Protocol allowed it, and she promised an officer would be there within the hour. While I waited, I checked my phone for the first time since leaving the house. 3 missed calls from Ethan, all within the last 40 minutes. No voicemails. Then a text. "Where are you? Dinner's not ready. Call me." Another 2 minutes later. "Ma, seriously, this isn't funny." Then one more, colder. "If you're at Linda's or somewhere, tell me. I'm not mad, just worried." I turned the phone off, set it face down on the nightstand next to Daniel's photo. The boy in that picture, gap-toothed, grinning, arms around my neck, felt like a stranger now. Officer Ramirez arrived at 12:40 p.m. She was mid-40s, short dark hair, calm eyes that didn't flinch when she saw my face. We sat in a small conference room downstairs. I told the story again, slower this time, with dates and details. She took notes in neat block letters. When I showed her the envelope, trust documents, bank records, photos, she raised an eyebrow but didn't comment, just said, "This is good." "This is thorough." She photographed the originals, gave me copies, and explained the process. They'd issue a temporary restraining order based on probable cause, serve Ethan at his workplace if necessary, and schedule a hearing within 10 days. "You don't have to go back," she said quietly. "Not ever, if you don't want to. We can help with emergency protective orders, housing referrals, even pressing criminal charges if you're ready." I nodded. I think I am. She left at 1:30 with my statement signed and witnessed. I went back to my room, lay on the narrow bed, and stared at the ceiling tiles. My body ached, ribs, eye, wrist, but the worst pain was deeper, a hollow ache in my chest where hope and grief collided. Meanwhile, across town, in the sleek glass building of Pinnacle Marketing on Michigan Avenue, Ethan was having the best morning of his year. He'd landed the senior account manager promotion. His boss, Carlin Wen, calls him into her office at 9:15 to congratulate him personally. "Big raise, bigger bonus, bigger clients," she said, clapping him on the shoulder. "Conference room at 11 for the team announcement." Ethan walked in at 10:55 feeling untouchable. New suit, charcoal gray, tailored last month. Hair perfect, smile practiced. He nodded at colleagues, accepted fist bumps, already picturing the celebratory drinks after work. Maybe he'd even call me later, smooth things over with an apology and a promise to do better. He always did, and I always forgave. The conference room was packed. 20 people, bagels and coffee on the side table, projector screen lowered. Carla stood at the head, smiling. Then she stepped aside. Robert Sullivan walked in. 75 years old, silver hair still thick, navy suit impeccable, walking with the quiet authority of a man who'd never needed to raise his voice to be heard. Ethan froze mid-step. "Mr. Sullivan," Ethan's voice cracked on the last syllable. "What are you doing here?" Robert didn't smile. He simply said, "Sit down, Ethan." The room went still. No one moved. No one spoke. Carla gestured to the chair at the far end of the table. Ethan sat slowly, like the floor might give way. Robert placed a thick folder on the table, manila, no label. He opened it deliberately, slid copies across to Carla and the HR director who just entered. Then he looked straight at Ethan. "Your mother isn't coming back to that house," he said, flat, final. "She's safe. She's filed a police report, and she's given me everything." Ethan's face strained white. This is ridiculous. She's confused. She fell last night. I was helping." Robert cut him off without raising his voice. "We have photos, dated. We have bank records showing unauthorized transfers, over $80,000. We have the amended trust documents you never knew existed. And we have a clause that says if you're found guilty of elder abuse or financial exploitation, you forfeit everything." Ethan laughed. Short, nervous. "You can't be serious. That's my inheritance, my house." "Not anymore," Robert said. "Effective immediately, your employment here is terminated for cause, misconduct related to financial impropriety and violation of company policy on workplace conduct. Security is waiting outside to escort you to your desk. You'll collect your personal items under supervision. The police are downstairs." The room was dead silent. Someone coughed. Ethan looked around wildly, searching for allies. No one met his eyes. He stood. "This is bullshit. She's lying. Robert leaned forward slightly. "Your mother is many things, Ethan, but she is not a liar. Not anymore." 2 security guards stepped into the doorway, big men in black polos. Ethan's shoulders slumped. He walked out without another word, head down, the folder left open on the table like an accusation. Back at the shelter, I didn't know any of this yet. I was still lying on the bed, breathing shallow to protect my ribs, listening to the muffled sounds of other women moving through the halls, soft footsteps, quiet voices, the occasional child's laugh. My phone stayed off. But somewhere deep inside, a small, stubborn part of me knew the storm was coming. Ethan stepped out of the elevator on the 14th floor of the Pinnacle Marketing Building at 10:58 a.m., still riding the high from Carla's earlier congratulations. The promotion announcement was scheduled for 11 sharp in Conference Room A. Glass walls, long mahogany table, view of Lake Michigan if the weather cooperated. He'd rehearsed his acceptance speech in the car. Humble, grateful, team player stuff. Already picturing the LinkedIn post he'd make later. Honored to step into the senior account manager role at Pinnacle, grateful for the trust and excited for what's next. #blessed, #grind. He pushed through the double doors, nodding at the cluster of colleagues already gathered. Someone handed him a coffee. Black, no sugar, the way he liked it. He took it with a grin. "Big day," he said to no one particular. Heads nodded, smiles all around. He felt invincible. Then he saw Robert Sullivan standing at the head of the table. Not sitting, standing, hands clasped behind his back, posture straight as a flagpole. Navy pinstripe suit, silver cufflinks catching the overhead lights. At 75, Robert still looked like he could run a courtroom or a boardroom without breaking a sweat. Ethan's grin faltered for half a second before he recovered. "Mr. Sullivan?" His voice came out higher than intended. "I didn't know you'd be here for this." Robert didn't answer right away. He simply tilted his head, the smallest acknowledgement, then said, "Sit down, Ethan." The room quieted like someone had flipped a mute switch. Carlin Wren, who'd been chatting with the creative director, turned slowly. The HR director, Karen Voss, mid-50s, always professional, stood by the door with her arms folded. No one moved to the bagels anymore. Ethan felt the shift in the air, that prickling sensation on the back of his neck. He laughed, short, forced. "What's this, a surprise party?" He glanced around for backup. No one laughed with him. Robert pulled out the chair at the far end of the table, the one nobody ever sat in because it faced the door like an interrogation seat. Ethan hesitated, then walked over and sat. The leather creaked under him. Robert remained standing. He reached into the slim leather portfolio at his side and withdrew a thick folder, manila, tabbed, no label. He placed it on the table with deliberate care, then opened it. Inside were printouts, photos, spreadsheets. He slid copies toward Carla and Karen without looking at Ethan. "Your mother," Robert began, voice even and measured, "is currently in a secure location. She is safe. She has filed a police report detailing years of physical abuse and financial exploitation at your hands." Ethan's mouth opened, closed. He looked at Carla for help. She was staring at the papers in front of her, face unreadable. "This is insane," Ethan said. "She's old. She's confused. Last night she fell in the kitchen. I was trying to help her up. She hit her head or something. She's been forgetful for months. You know how it is with—" Robert cut him off without raising his volume. "We have dated photographs of her injuries going back to 2018. We have medical records from urgent care visits she never told you about. We have bank statements showing unauthorized transfers totaling $82,347 over the past 5 years. Transfers you made using her debit card and forged checks you deposited into your personal accounts." Ethan's hands gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. That's for household expenses. She asked me to handle things after Dad died. She trusts me." Robert slid another page forward, a color copy of the 2019 Trust Amendment. "Your father's revocable living trust. You were never trustee. Your mother was. She amended it quietly after the first documented assault. I am now successor trustee. Paragraph 7.4b is quite clear. Any beneficiary adjudicated or pleading guilty to elder abuse, financial exploitation, or domestic violence against the settler forfeits all interest in the trust estate. That interest, house appraised at $620,000, brokerage accounts, life insurance proceeds, will be redirected in full to the Chicago Metropolitan Family Violence Shelter." The room was so quiet Ethan could hear his own heartbeat. He laughed again, hollow this time. "You can't do that. That's my inheritance. My house. I've been taking care of her for years." Robert met his eyes. "Taking care of her does not include beating her over unsalted soup, or stealing from her retirement, or isolating her from friends and family." Ethan looked around the table again. Carla was shaking her head slowly. Karen Voss had her phone out, typing something, probably notes for termination paperwork. The creative director had backed up against the window like he wanted to disappear into the glass. "I want a lawyer," Ethan said, voice cracking now. "You're entitled to one," Robert replied. "But first, you're terminated, effective immediately. Grounds: violation of company code of conduct regarding integrity, financial misconduct, and behavior inconsistent with our values. Security will escort you to your desk. You have 10 minutes to collect personal items. No company devices, no client files. The police are waiting in the lobby to serve the temporary restraining order and take your statement." Ethan stepped out of the elevator on the 14th floor of the Pinnacle Marketing Building at 10:58 a.m., still riding the high from Carla's earlier congratulations. The promotion announcement was scheduled for 11 sharp in Conference Room A. Glass walls, long mahogany table, view of Lake Michigan if the weather cooperated. He'd rehearsed his acceptance speech in the car, humble, grateful, team player stuff. Already picturing the LinkedIn post he'd make later. Honored to step into the senior account manager role at Pinnacle. Grateful for the trust and excited for what's next. #blessed, #grind. He pushed through the double doors, nodding at the cluster of colleagues already gathered. Someone handed him a coffee, black, no sugar, the way he liked it. He took it with a grin. "Big day," he said to no one in particular. Heads nodded, smiles all around. He felt invincible. Then he saw Robert Sullivan standing at the head of the table. 2 security guards stepped into the doorway. Same guys who handled drunk execs at holiday parties. Big shoulders, neutral faces. One held a clear plastic evidence bag, already labeled with Ethan's name. Ethan stood slowly, looked at Robert one last time. She's doing this to hurt me. She's always hated that I'm not like Dad. Robert's expression didn't change. Your mother loved you enough to protect you from yourself for years. She stopped when she realized she couldn't protect herself anymore. Ethan's jaw worked. No words came. He turned and walked toward the door, shoulders hunched. The guards fell in step behind him. No one spoke as he passed. No sympathetic glances. No, we'll get through this. Just silence. In the hallway, the fluorescent lights sliced overhead. Ethan's reflection in the glass walls looked smaller than he remembered. Tie crooked now, suit jacket wrinkled from gripping the chair. At his desk, he opened drawers mechanically. Phone charger, protein bar wrappers, a photo of him and me at his college graduation, smiling, arms around each other. He stared at it for 3 seconds, then dropped it into the box security provided. Down in the lobby, 2 uniformed officers waited near the revolving doors. One held a clipboard. The other had handcuffs visible on his belt.
"Ethan James Thompson?" the taller one asked. Ethan nodded once. "We need you to come with us." He didn't resist, didn't argue, just followed them out into the bright October sunlight, past the fountain where tourists took selfies, past the food trucks already setting up for lunch. Back at the shelter, I still didn't know any of this had happened. I was sitting in the common room, sipping weak herbal tea, staring at a TV muted on the Weather Channel. My phone stayed off in my room. I hadn't turned it on since yesterday. But something in the air felt different, lighter, like the first crack in a dam that's held too long. I didn't smile, not yet, but for the first time in years, I exhaled without checking over my shoulder first, and that small breath felt like freedom.
The courtroom on the 4th floor of the Cook County Courthouse smelled like old paper, floor wax, and nervous sweat. It was smaller than I expected. No grand, warble columns, just beige walls, fluorescent lights that buzzed faintly, and rows of wooden benches worn smooth by years of waiting families. I sat in the front row on the plaintiff's side, wearing the navy dress I'd bought for Daniel's funeral. Simple, long sleeves to cover the last faint yellow bruise on my forearm. My hair was pinned back neatly, no makeup except a touch of concealer under my right eye. I wanted to look like what I was, a tired, ordinary woman who'd finally stopped pretending. The case moved faster than anyone predicted. Elder abuse charges under Illinois Statute 720 ILCS 512-3.2. Financial exploitation of an elderly person, aggravated battery. The Cook County State's Attorney's Office took it seriously, partly because of the dollar amount, partly because Robert Sullivan had quietly made a few calls. He didn't testify. He didn't need to. The document spoke louder than any witness could. Ethan's lawyer was a young associate from a mid-tier firm downtown. Cheap suit, nervous tic in his left eye, the kind of attorney who took the case because the retainer check cleared. He tried to build a defense around family conflict and mutual provocation. He painted me as forgetful, emotional, maybe even vindictive after losing my husband. He suggested the soup incident was an argument that got out of hand, that I'd exaggerated years of disagreements to punish Ethan for his financial struggles. He even floated the idea that the trust amendment was coerced when I was grieving and not of sound mind.
The judge, a woman in her late 50s named Honorable Elena Vasquez, didn't look impressed. She had short silver hair, reading glasses on a chain, and the calm authority of someone who'd seen every version of this story. I took the stand on the 3rd day. The bailiff swore me in. My right hand on the Bible felt steady, even though my left trembled in my lap. The prosecutor, Assistant State's Attorney Maria Delgado, dark hair pulled into a tight bun, started gently. "Mrs. Thompson, can you tell the court about the evening of October 22nd last year?" I spoke slowly, clearly, described coming home from the library volunteer shift, simmering the soup all afternoon, setting the table the way I always did, Ethan walking in, slamming the door, 1 spoonful, the spoon cracking against the table, the word salt spat like an accusation, the wrist grab, the open slap, the fist, the floor, the blood, the way he stood over me and said, "You made me do this." The courtroom was silent except for the court reporter's soft tapping. I didn't cry. I'd saved those tears for the shelter room at 2 a.m. Here, I kept my voice level. Facts only. Delgado moved to the financials next. She projected bank statements on the screen, Redacted account numbers, but the transactions clear in red ink. $1,200 to an online sportsbook, $3,800 to a casino app, $750 to a credit card Ethan had opened in my name without telling me. Forged signature on the back of a check for $5,000 made out to cash. Did you authorize these transfers, Mrs. Thompson? No. Did you give your son permission to use your debit card for gambling? No.
Did you know about the forged checks?
No. Ethan sat at the defense table, head down, hands folded. He didn't look at me once during my testimony. His lawyer cross-examined me for 40 minutes, trying to trip me up on dates, suggesting I'd encouraged Ethan to handle finances after Daniel died, implying I'd been overly dependent and therefore complicit. I answered every question the same way. Calm, direct, unflinching. Yes, I asked him to help with bills after the has been passed. No, I never asked him to steal from me. Yes, I stayed silent for years. No, that doesn't make the abuse my fault. When I stepped down, my legs felt like water, but I walked back to my seat without stumbling. Robert was there, in the back row, not testifying, just present. He gave me the smallest nod. It was enough. Ethan took the stand the next morning. He wore a gray suit that looked too big on him now. Weight loss from stress, maybe, or jail food. His voice cracked when he swore the oath. His lawyer led him through a scripted story. Overwhelmed by work, grieving his father, trying to protect me from bad decisions. The soup night was heated words that escalated. He admitted shoving me once or twice in frustration, but denied punches, denied years of pattern. The money? Loans I'd agreed to. The trust amendment? She was confused after Dad died. I should have been more involved. Delgado's cross was surgical. Mr. Thompson, did you ever seek counseling for anger management before October of last year? No.
Did you ever apologize to your mother in writing or verbally for any physical altercation prior to her leaving the home? I tried to make things right. Did you forge her signature on a check dated April 14th, 2022, in the amount of $5,000? Silence. Then, I don't recall. She projected the check enlargement. His handwriting on the memo line. Emergency. My forged signature below it. Shaky, but unmistakable. Do you recall now? He looked at the judge. I needed the money. I was going to pay it back. The judge's expression didn't change, but her pen stopped moving. Closing arguments came the following Monday. Delgado spoke for 20 minutes, quiet fury wrapped in facts. The defense tried sympathy. A son under pressure. A family torn apart. No winners here. Judge Vasquez deliberated less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Elder abuse, Class 3 felony. Financial exploitation, Class 2 felony. Aggravated battery, Class 3 felony. Sentencing came 3 weeks later. 3 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections, with credit for time served awaiting trial. Mandatory anger management and substance abuse treatment. Full restitution, $82,347 plus court costs. Permanent order of protection. No contact, direct or indirect. Ethan stood when the sentence was read, his face crumpled for the first time. Not anger, not defiance, just collapse. He looked at me then, really looked, for the first time since the night of the soup. I met his eyes. No hatred, no pity, just quiet finality. The bailiff cuffed him. He shuffled out, shoulders rounded, the gray suit hanging off him like defeat. Outside the courthouse, Robert waited on the steps. He didn't hug me, never had, but he placed a hand lightly on my shoulder. You were very brave in there, Margaret. I managed a small smile. I was terrified. Brave and terrified aren't opposites, he said. They're the same thing most days. I looked up at the gray Chicago sky. No rain today, just cold, clean air. The trust forfeiture clause activated automatically upon conviction. The house went on the market the next month. Proceeds, after fees, went straight to the shelter. The brokerage accounts followed. Ethan's fiancée, a woman I'd met only twice, left him the week after sentencing. The local news ran a short piece. Local man sentenced at elder abuse case. No names for me, protective order, but enough details that old neighbors whispered when I walked past. I didn't care. For the first time in decades, the shadows in the courtroom weren't mine to carry alone. They belonged to him now.
And I walked out into the daylight, bruised but unbroken, ready to learn what living without them felt like. The first letter arrived 6 weeks after sentencing, forwarded from the county jail through the shelter's P.O. box. I'd given the address only to Robert and the prosecutor's victim advocate, no one else. The envelope was plain white, no return address, just my name in Ethan's familiar slanted handwriting. The postmark read Stateville Correctional Center. I held it unopened for 3 days, staring at it on the small dresser in my shelter room, like it might explode if I touched it. On the 4th day, I sat on the edge of the bed, opened it with a butter knife from the communal kitchen, and read. Ma, I don't know if you'll even read this. They told me the order of protection means I'm not supposed to contact you, but the counselor here said writing letters is part of the program, processing guilt, taking responsibility. So here I am. I'm sorry. I know those words don't fix anything. I know they're too late, but I need to say them anyway. The night with the soup? I remember every second now. The way your face changed when I hit you. The way you curled up on the floor like you were trying to disappear. I stood there watching the TV laugh track and felt nothing. That's the part that scares me most. I felt nothing. They have me in a group here. Anger management, substance abuse, domestic violence offenders. They make us read victim impact statements out loud. Last week, a guy read one from his mother. She wrote about how she still flinches when doors slam. I cried in the middle of the circle. Everyone pretended not to notice. I keep thinking about Dad, how he'd look at me if he could see this, how he'd look at you, bruised because of me. I was supposed to take care of you after he died. Instead, I turned into the thing he always warned me against, someone who uses strength to hurt instead of protect. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve to ask for it. But I want you to know I'm trying. Not for early release, not to look good, just because I finally see what I did, and I hate it. If you ever want to write back, the counselor said they'll screen it first. If not, I understand. I love you, Ma. I always did, even when I showed it the worst way possible. Ethan. I folded the letter back into the envelope. My hands didn't shake. My eyes didn't fill. I just felt empty, like reading his words had scooped out the last bit of emotion I'd been holding on to. I didn't write back. The second letter came a month later, postmarked from the same place but thinner, like he'd run out of things to say. Ma.
They moved me to medium security last week. Better food, more yard time. Doesn't matter. The nights are still long. I dream about the kitchen sometimes. Not the hitting part, the before. You stirring the pot, humming that old hymn you liked, the one about Amazing Grace. I'd sit at the table doing homework, stealing carrots when you weren't looking. You'd pretend not to notice. I miss that version of us. I miss the kid I was. I miss the mom who thought I could do no wrong. The group leader asked me to write down one thing I wish I could undo. I wrote the soup night. Then I crossed it out and wrote all of it. Every shove, every stolen dollar, every time I made you afraid to speak in your own house. I'm starting to understand why you left. Not just the bruises, the silence. You were disappearing piece by piece, and I was the one handing you the eraser. I don't know if you're still at the shelter or if you've moved on. Robert won't tell me anything. He said it's not my business anymore. I hope you're okay. I hope you're breathing easier. Ethan. Again, no reply. The third letter arrived after I'd moved into my own apartment, a small one-bedroom near Lake Michigan, subsidized through a victim assistance program. The building had good locks, a doorman who knew my name, and windows that let in real sunlight instead of just hallway fluorescence. This one was different, longer, messier, ink smudged in places like his hand had been shaking. Ma, they let me call collect last week. I tried your old number. It's disconnected. I didn't expect it to ring, but hearing the message, The number you have reached is no longer in service. Felt like a door slamming in my face.
I'm not writing to beg. I know the restraining order is permanent. I know the trust money is gone. The house sold last month. I saw the listing online before they blocked me from real estate sites. Some young couple bought it, probably fixing it up, painting over everything we ever were. I keep thinking about that clause you put in the trust. You planned for this. You knew I might become this, and you protected yourself anyway. That hurts worse than losing the money, knowing you saw it coming years ago and still gave me chance after chance. The counselor says guilt is supposed to motivate change. Mine feels like a knife that keeps twisting. Every time I close my eyes, I see your face that night. Blood on your lip, fear in your good eye. I did that. Me. I'm trying to be better. I go to every class. I read the books they give us. I'm even journaling. Sounds stupid, but it helps. I wrote about the first time I hit you, Christmas 2017. I was drunk and scared about money, and I took it out on you because you were there. I wish I could take it back. All of it. If you ever read this, know that I'm not the same person who walked out of that courtroom. I don't expect you to believe it. I just needed to say it. I'm sorry, Ma. For everything. Ethan. I read it twice. Then I carried it to the kitchen sink, turned on the gas stove, and held the corner to the flame. The paper curled black, caught, burned slow. I dropped the last piece into the sink and watched it turn to ash. No tears, no anger, just quiet. The final letter came a year after sentencing, forwarded again, this time from a halfway house in Joliet. Ma.
They let me out on parole last month. Good behavior, completed all programs. I'm working at a warehouse, forklift certification, steady hours, minimum wage plus overtime. It's not much, but it's honest. I live in a shared house with other guys from the program. Rules, curfew, random drug tests. I follow them all. I don't know where you are. I don't know if you're happy. I hope you are. I saw your name in a newsletter from the shelter, volunteer of the month or something. You are helping other women now. That makes me proud and ashamed at the same time. I won't write again. This is the last one. The counselor said closure is important for both of us. I'm sorry I broke what we had. I'm sorry I broke you. If there's ever a day you want to hear from me, not today, maybe not ever, but if that day comes, I'll be here, trying to be someone worth knowing. Goodbye, Ma. Ethan. I didn't burn this one. I folded it neatly, placed it in the bottom drawer of my nightstand, next to Daniel's photo. Not forgiveness, not forgetting, just evidence that the boy I raised still existed somewhere inside the man who'd hurt me. I closed the drawer, locked it.
Then I walked to the window, opened it wide, and let the lake wind blow through the apartment. Clean, cold, carrying the faint smell of water and possibility. The letters had broken him, but they no longer had the power to break me. The apartment was on the 4th floor of a mid-rise building in Evanston, just blocks from the lake. Rent controlled through a victim services voucher, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, a galley kitchen that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner when I moved in. The walls were landlord beige, the carpet industrial gray, but the windows faced east. Every morning the sun came in soft and gold, painting stripes across the living room floor. I hadn't seen morning like that in years, not really seen it. In the old house, curtains stayed drawn until Ethan left for work. Now, I left them open all day. I moved in 3 weeks after the sentencing, once the house sold and the trust proceeds cleared. Robert handled the paperwork, quietly, efficiently, the way he always did. He never asked if I wanted to keep the house. He knew the answer. When the closing documents came through, he drove me to the title company himself, waited in the lobby while I signed, then took me to a small diner on Dempster for coffee and pie. We didn't talk much. He just said, "You've earned this fresh start, Margaret." I nodded. The cherry pie tasted like freedom.
The first weeks were strange, too quiet, too empty. I'd wake at 5:30 out of habit, make coffee, stand at the window watching the lake turn from black to silver. No one to cook for, no one to tiptoe around, no eggshells to walk on. The silence used to scare me. Now it felt like breathing room. I started therapy in January. A counselor named Dr. Elena Ramirez, mid-40s, warm brown eyes, no-nonsense voice that never sounded pitying. We met weekly in a small office near the university. First session, I sat on the couch, clutching my purse like a shield, and said, "I don't know where to start." She smiled gently. "Start wherever it hurts most." So I did. We talked about the bruises, physical ones first, then the deeper kind. The way I'd apologized for existing in my own home. The way I'd convinced myself love meant enduring. The way I'd stayed because leaving felt like abandoning the little boy who used to draw me pictures of houses with big red hearts on the roof. Dr. Ramirez never rushed me. She listened. She asked questions that made me think instead of defend. "What did staying cost you?" she asked once. I cried for the first time in her office that day. Not loud sobs, just quiet tears that ran down my cheeks and soaked the collar of my sweater. I learned words I'd never used before. Trauma bonding, coercive control, gaslighting. I learned that what Ethan did wasn't my fault, even if part of me still whispered otherwise in the dark. I learned that healing isn't linear. It's messy. 2 steps forward, 1 back, sometimes 3 back. But every session I left feeling a little lighter. I started volunteering at Safe Harbor twice a week. Not in the shelter itself, too close to the memories, but in their outreach office downtown. I answered phones, sorted donations, sat with new women during intake when they needed someone who understood without needing explanations. I listened to stories that sounded too much like mine, the slow isolation, the excuses, the moment the mask finally slipped. I held hands, I poured coffee. I said, "You're not crazy, you're not alone." Words I wished someone had said to me sooner. One afternoon, a woman in her late 50s came in, graying hair, hands knotted with arthritis, eyes hollow. She whispered that her son had been taking her pension checks for 2 years. When she asked for grocery money, he'd locked her in the bedroom overnight. She escaped through a window while he was at work. I sat with her for an hour. When she finished, she looked at me and said, "How did you get out?" I told her my story. The soup, the email to Robert, the courtroom, the burned letters. She cried. Then she hugged me so tight my ribs ached in memory. "Thank you," she said, "for showing me it's possible." I reconnected with old friends slowly. Linda from the law firm, now retired in Scottsdale, called after Robert gave her my new number. We talked for 3 hours the first time. She cried when I told her everything. "I suspected," she said. "I should have pushed harder." I told her it wasn't her fault. We started weekly video calls. She sent me pictures of her garden, her grandkids. I sent her photos of the lake at sunrise. I joined a book club at the local library, mostly women my age, reading cozy mysteries and historical fiction. No one asked about my past. They just welcomed me with coffee and smiles. I laughed at their jokes. I shared my own. It felt strange at first, like wearing shoes that didn't quite fit, but it got easier. The bruises faded completely by spring. The burn scar on my forearm turned pale silver, a thin line I could cover with a watch. The ribs stopped aching on rainy days, but the deeper marks took longer. Loud noises still made me flinch. A raised voice on the street could send my heart racing. I kept the deadbolt locked, even when I was home. I slept with a small bat under the bed, not because I expected Ethan, but because the weight of it felt like control. I walked every morning along the lake path, 2 miles out, 2 back. Tennis shoes, windbreaker, earbuds playing soft jazz, or nothing at all. The water changed color with the seasons, steel gray in winter, deep blue in summer. I watched sailboats, dog walkers, kids on bikes. I breathed in the cold, clean air and exhaled the old fear, bit by bit. One evening in June, I stood at the window watching the sun sink behind the skyline. The apartment was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator and distant traffic. I thought about the old house, the one with the chipped blue bowl and the African violets that never bloomed. I thought about Ethan in his halfway house, stacking boxes for minimum wage. I thought about the boy who used to hug me so hard his small arms shook. I didn't hate him. I didn't love him the way I once did. What I felt was something quieter, a tired acceptance. He was his own person now, his choices, his consequences. Mine were different. I turned from the window, walked to the kitchen, and made myself a cup of tea. No one to cook for, no one to apologize to. Just me. And for the first time in decades, that was enough. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was mine.
2 years after the courtroom doors closed behind Ethan, I stood on the small balcony of my Evanston apartment, coffee mug warm in my hands, watching the first light touch the surface of Lake Michigan. The water looked like hammered silver that morning, calm, endless, indifferent to everything that had come before. I was 70 now, gray hair pulled into a loose bun, reading glasses perched on my nose, a soft cardigan against the early spring chill. No bruises, no flinches at sudden noises, no apologies waiting on the tip of my tongue. What I did next wasn't dramatic. There was no grand confrontation, no final phone call, no moment of cinematic revenge. Revenge would have required energy I no longer had, or wanted, to spend on him. What I did was quieter, more ordinary, and infinitely harder. I chose to live. I sold the last pieces of the old life. The chipped blue bowl went to a thrift shop on Main Street. Some young mother bought it for 50 cents, smiling like she'd found treasure. The African violets finally died. I'd stopped watering them the day I left Oak Park, and I didn't replace them. Instead, I bought a single-piece lily from the corner florist. It thrived on the windowsill, green leaves glossy, white blooms appearing like small miracles every few months. I traveled for the first time in decades. Not far at first, just a weekend in Door County with Linda, walking rocky beaches, eating cherry pie, talking late into the night about nothing and everything. Then a week in Asheville with my sister Carol, who'd driven up from St. Louis the month after the sentencing, tears in her eyes, arms open. We cried together on her hotel balcony, then laughed until our sides hurt remembering childhood stories. She never said I told you so. She didn't have to. She just stayed. I started painting. Not well, never well, but enough to fill the blank walls with color. Watercolors mostly, lake sunrises, city skylines at dusk, abstract shapes that looked like feelings I couldn't name yet. I took a class at the community center on Tuesday evenings. The instructor, a retired art teacher named Grace, never critiqued technique. She just said, "What does this color feel like to you?" I painted a lot of blues those first months, deep navy, storm gray. Then slowly, the yellows crept in, pale gold, buttercup, sunrise. I volunteered more, not just at Safe Harbor, though I still went twice a month to sit with new women, hold space while they cried or raged or stared at the floor in silence. I joined the board of a small nonprofit that provided legal aid to elderly abuse victims. Robert introduced me. He'd stepped back from the firm but still consulted on pro bono cases. We met for coffee once a month at a little place near the courthouse. He never asked about Ethan. I never brought him up. We talked about books, the Cubs' latest losing streak, the way the city changed block by block. Old friends don't need every detail. They just need to know you're still here. I dated once, a widower named Paul. Retired history professor, gentle laugh, terrible at small talk, but excellent at listening. We met at the book club. He asked me to coffee after we both hated the same predictable mystery novel. We went on 4 dates, held hands during a walk along the lake, kissed once under a street lamp. Then I told him my story, the short version. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "I'm glad you got out, and I'm glad you told me." We stayed friends. That was enough. I wrote letters I never sent. To Daniel telling him I was okay. To the boy Ethan used to be, saying I still loved the memory of him, even if I couldn't love the man. To myself at 66, curled on the kitchen floor. You survived. You did what you had to. Now live. The news about Ethan came in fragments. A former neighbor mentioned seeing him stocking shelves at a big box store in Joliet. Another said he'd moved to Rockford, working construction. No contact, ever. The restraining order held. I didn't look him up online. I didn't need to know the details. His life was his now. Mine was mine.
Last fall, I turned 70 on a crisp October day, the same month the soup incident happened years earlier. Linda flew in. Carol drove up. We had brunch at a lakeside cafe. Mimosas, eggs Benedict, too much laughter. They gave me gifts, a soft throw blanket, a set of watercolor brushes, a card that read, "To the strongest woman we know." I cried then. Happy tears. The kind that don't hurt. That night, alone again, I sat at my small dining table with the peace lily beside me and opened the bottom drawer. Ethan's last letter was still there, folded neatly. I read it one final time, not out of longing, but to close the circle.
Then I carried it to the balcony, tore it into small pieces, and let the wind take them. White scraps fluttered down toward the streetlights, like snow in reverse. I watched until the last one disappeared. What I did next wasn't revenge. It wasn't justice in the courtroom sense, though that came too. It was survival turned into something fuller, a life rebuilt brick by quiet brick. I stopped making excuses for him. I stopped apologizing for existing. I stopped believing love required bleeding. And that changed everything. The fear that used to live in my chest moved out. In its place came mornings I actually looked forward to, conversations that didn't end in eggshells, sleep without one eye open, laughter that started in my belly instead of dying in my throat. If you're reading this, maybe hiding bruises under long sleeves, making excuses to friends, telling yourself it's temporary, listen to me. You are not weak for staying silent as long as you did. You were surviving. But survival isn't the end of the story. There is a moment. Maybe it's a bowl of unsalted soup. Maybe it's a quiet email at 3 a.m. Maybe it's the day you pack a small bag and walk out that changes the direction. Not because it's heroic, because it's honest. You don't have to forgive. You don't have to forget. You just have to choose yourself. One small, terrifying step at a time. I'm 70 now. I walk by the lake every morning. I paint, I laugh, I breathe, I live. And every sunrise feels like proof. What came after was worth everything it took to get here. The unsalted soup wasn't the reason he hurt me. It was the excuse. What I did next? I stopped accepting excuses. For him, for myself, for anyone. And that changed everything.